recording.
And we're live.
All right.
I feel like I'm missing something in my notes. Anyways, you're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
And currently we are watching network television because me and Nathan do not watch network television.
Did you figure out what you're missing?
I don't. No, I feel like I'm missing something from the notes, but anyways, it doesn't.
Okay.
That was missing too. But we are watching, as it aired, season 1 of the Blacklist in 2014, season 2 of The Mentalist in 2009. I have it written as 2010 here. Edit that. And we're also watching 1985's Miami Vice, the second season of that. So as always, we start with the Blacklist. We have season 1, episode 11, The Good Samaritan, number 106. Original air date January 13th, 2014, NBC Monday. A serial.
This like a special effect. The podcast is on fire.
Yeah, we just have our oven's too good.
The old oven's too good. Well, for those of you just joining us, we don't think Common's in any danger.
No, it happens. We'll just
The
wait
dog
till.
seems excited. You just don't want to talk the episode over that? That'd be wonderful.
Thank God it's edited.
Beep, beep, beep.
It'll probably be really easy to pick out in the edit. So
Yeah, you have nice high spikes. That will work out good. So this is that gold that only the people that are patient and watch this on YouTube get. By those people, I mean me. But yeah.
And me, when I spot check the episodes, like, is everything working? Yeah, it seems to be working. Are we good? I think we're better than most podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, we're not doing bad for not throwing $10,000 into this.
Well, I was listening to every once in a while. I'm like, yeah, I like doing the podcast, but it's like, should we be getting more attention, or are we just like narcissistic? We love the sound of our own voice too much, and then like I'll listen to like bigger podcasts, and so on YouTube I've been watching the Donut Media. They like cover a bunch of car stuff. Their stuff's pretty fun. They just kind of do like top 10 lists of stuff. And I listened to their podcast, and their podcast is, I don't want to say it's bad, but it's pretty much 3 guys who don't know how to hand off to each other reading a Wikipedia page of like drivers and cars.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, we digress into that sometimes too, but do the intro again. You just want to start over.
Oh, I just well, the intro's fine. I'll just and as we start with the Blacklist, season 1, episode 11, The Good Samaritan, number 106. Original air date January 13th, 2014, NBC Monday. A serial killer from Liz's past strikes again while Red hunts for his betrayer. What the hell? That's a weird edit. Anyways, I didn't completely delete. It's a betrayer and then dot find him. I'm like, what? So either that was the previous description that didn't get edited out, or I'm missing something. Anyways, showing our John Bokenkamp, written by Brandon Margolis and Brandon Saunier, and directed by Dan Lerner, who he has an interesting career, because if you look it up, he's just kind of a reliable TV director, but as a camera operator, he's worked on like a lot of big movies, like Courage Under Fire, The Witness, Defiance, and Sophie's Choice.
Wow. Couple World War II things in there.
Yeah.
both involving death camps. Dark.
The reason I was just listening to a podcast where they were reviewing Sophie's Choice because it's a movie they had never seen, which is also a movie I've never seen because I just know it's
never
like
seen that? Oh,
no,
okay.
it's like because I just know about it. I'm like, oh, that's sadness, but like, but they were surprised that like, oh, this they thought it was gonna be like 100%. They thought it was gonna be like 100% like the Nazi camp stuff. Well, it's really like the last 20 minutes or whatever is that.
Yeah. The rest of it's like, was it take place in Poland? I think. Yeah. It's been a long time.
Well, it's in New York, but she's from Poland.
Yeah. It's just.
But the majority of it takes place in New York.
Yeah.
Anyways, I wasn't expecting that, so I just knew it was a sad like historical based movie that I didn't want to watch.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, it's it's not like the gut punch that like Schindler's List is.
Yeah.
Because when you watch that, when you're done, you're like, oh, I'm sad. I mean, I'm just horrified. Liam Neeson's best performance, I think. But anyway.
Well, I also heard like, but it's like undeniable how great of an actress Meryl Streep is in that movie. It's like one of the best performances. So, anyways.
Oh yeah.
We start off with some lady is like dropping off her kid at a birthday party, and then we have Frank Whaley shows up, who is a consummate character actor.
Yes.
He's been in tons of things. I think it's something like he's had a couple of leading roles that are somewhat known. I think probably the biggest one was called Career Opportunities, where it's like he's like a night shift like guard for like a Target or something, and it's like him and Jennifer Connelly just messing around at night, and then there's like somebody trying to rob the place or something.
Okay.
And then he was in Swimming with Sharks, where he plays like an assistant who's berated by what's his name? Guy from Seven, the serial killer in Seven.
Oh, Kevin Spacey?
Yeah, Kevin Spacey.
Or he whose name shall never be mentioned.
I mean, we're not depicting him in a positive light, so it's okay.
No, we don't have to. You know, all the stuff with him like didn't really resonate with me. It's like, oh yeah, he's a creep. But then when he did that thing a couple Christmases ago, where he randomly releases these YouTube videos,
yeah,
where he basically talks like the character from House of Cards, and he's like, you kill them with kindness, and like 2 days later the guy commits suicide. Like, oh, okay, I don't know what's going on here, but this is too weird. Okay, that's when Kevin Spacey really started. He was on my radar. I was like, oh, this is weird. And not because I think it's a conspiracy, but because I think he directed that, and that guy just probably reacted that way. It's like, that's evil. That's just evil for millions to watch. Oh, there goes my voice again. I'm going through my second puberty, everyone.
And also I think Frank Lay is the guy that kills Jimmy Hoffa in the Hoffa movie.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he's been in ton thing. Anyways.
Yeah, I recognize he's a very distinct looking man.
Yeah.
In this movie or in this TV show, I thought of him as evil. What's the comedian's name? The guy who does Goat Boy on Saturday Night Live. He's really funny. What's his name?
Well, he used to be funny. Have you seen his recent stuff?
No, I just remember like his crazy stories on Opie and Anthony. Like that's my last reference of him. Why is he a Nazi now or something?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, I was just joking. Oh, God. Okay. Well,
mind. He's not a Nazi. He's just he's like anti-vaxxer, and he's like going to crowds that like they're there to basically hear him make fun of basically informed people. And it's it's incredibly embarrassing. Jim Brewer.
Jim Brewer. Yeah, I thought of this guy as evil Jim Brewer. Yeah. Oh, I liked his crazy stories about him and his dad. I didn't know he was doing that. Well, did everyone just go crazy the last 2 years? Like, is there some mass psychosis in the world?
I don't know. There's a weird thing with comedians right now where it's like we're finding out that comedians are a bit way more conservative than we've like been led to believe. But also there's this kind of like there's this thought. There's like comedians always held like the only thing that comedians are like kind of like seen as like a beacon of is like free speech, and so they all think that free speech is under attack because if you try to make a career off of like belittling people and making fun of people in a very like tactless way, that then when people stop paying to see your stuff, that somehow you're canceled, and it's a whole weird thing. So
Oh, I mean, just make fun of rich people and stuff. That's fine.
yeah.
I mean, make fun of the people that deserve to be made fun of.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's what it was. Carlin always said, like, punch up, don't punch down. So
I don't make fun of like people in wheelchairs and stuff. Like that's not, nobody wants that.
unless you're in a wheelchair, then you can do it.
Well, yeah.
Then everybody's uncomfortable and laughing.
I mean, yeah, I like. Trust me, I've said this before, and you know how I'm kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out on free speech. I don't want it to be too abusive, but I also want there to be a format where I can go listen to stuff because I have a horrible sense of humor. But it's not about particular individuals. It's just in general. I don't mind horrible humor. But then again, I understand like if you've been a victim of stuff, like you don't want to hear that. It's like, oh, I get that.
Yeah.
This is my own personal sickness. I just like horrible joke, but not like Holocaust jokes or something. I'm not that far, but there is.
You'll chuckle at them because
like
it's incredibly tasteless. So it's like, I can't believe someone said that out loud. That's awful, but it's funny because you can't believe it, not because you actually think it's funny. Oftentimes on here we'll talk about like someone being brutally murdered or something, and it's like because it's so absurd, we'll laugh when we say, "And they were murdered."
Yeah. But it's also pretend too. It didn't really happen.
Anyways.
Yeah. Jim Brewer, evil Jim Brewer. Became evil Jim Brewer. Or not evil, just misguided.
So Frank Willie shows up, he offers a drink to Karen, who's a Karen. And then Karen leaves it to get in her car, and then she passes out on the ground. And then she wakes up and Frank has Karen tied up in some serial killer room. And he just calmly like punctures her lung and like breaks her collarbone, and then like you see her like dying as he calls an ambulance. And so like technically this guy doesn't kill his victims, he like inflicts so many wounds on them at a time that they will die eventually if somebody doesn't save them in time.
Yeah, see, I didn't know. This was another horribly creepy Blacklist thing.
Yeah,
because of how they construct language in this show. Because basically this woman drops her kid off at like a ball pit or one of those kids fun areas where Chuck E. Cheese, whatever. And then she's like kind of in a hurry. She doesn't seem like a bad person. And this guy's being a little too friendly, but he's like, "Oh no, I'm so and so's uncle or whatever," and hands her the drink. And then she passes out. And I was like, "Oh, does she work for the government? Is this an assassination thing or what is it?" And then she wakes up in the murder surgical suite that's in this guy's garage, like his project garage. And then he says, "Now I'm going to puncture your lung." And he has surgical tools. And then he describes what her body's going to do when he does that. Because it's like, yeah, your lung's going to deflate and fill with blood. You're going to involuntarily cough. And then we have the sound effect of like off screen, like he's doing it. And you just see her face and that happens.
Yeah.
And I'm immediately thinking like, oh, I hope this guy just gets killed. This guy's just a psycho. Like, I don't like this guy. He's having way too much fun with this and he's way too skilled. It's like, oh, this is truly an evil person.
Which is a great composition or contrast, because essentially Red is doing this kind of the same thing the whole episode.
Yeah, Reddington's that's why I immediately picked up on like, oh, okay. These guys are doing horrible things. But in their minds, it's like, oh, this is justifiable because of A, B, or C. But that's whoever wrote this. Like, I'm gonna say overall, this episode was a little uneven because there was almost too much big stuff going on.
Yeah,
and I think the serial killer / revenge guy, his story was sort of overshadowed by what was going on.
Yeah, it's like you have an A-B story, and there's like a little too much of both.
Yeah. It doesn't have like that gut punch from the beginning, like, oh, this is going to be a good episode. And then Raymond goes on and does what he does as a side story. And then it's like, oh, this is going to be really good. But then it becomes almost overwhelming. And it's like, wait a minute, which how am I supposed to put this together? What am I following? And yeah,
But I think
it's
it was a good, like we were talking about, like following up like a big episode arc. Like
yeah,
this is a pretty good follow up where it's like you can't compete with the previous episodes, so you're just gonna kind of do a little bit something different, a little new flavor, but then you're kind of like gonna slowly work things back on track to where you were before the big episode.
yeah.
But also like, so I don't think you brought this up last year, but there is like an interesting like broadcast like schedule that between a modern one and the old one, because like we'll see with Miami Vice, like we're still doing episodes in like the middle of December, and so they just like start broadcasting and just go, and every week they don't care about the holiday or whatnot. Where it's here, there's like a month break between like the last episode and this episode, because
Oh, okay.
you like break for Christmas, you don't hang around for New Year's, and then eventually like somewhere in January you start airing your next episode again.
Okay. All right.
So we're not necessarily watching this like the way it would have been watched, but like yeah, so but like in the original broadcast, there have been like almost a month break between these episodes. But it would probably also be still confusing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we have Tom and Liz are talking, and Tom's looking for a job in Lincoln, Nebraska, because he just wants to get away from all this stuff. So he thinks a location will help.
Yeah.
But it probably won't. Yeah, then we learned that like apparently Liz worked on this serial case before. They never caught him, and they call him the Good Samaritan because he calls an ambulance to give people a chance to. Although they never say that anybody is successful at reviving the people, but
Yeah, it's always out there. Like, well, life is in the balance. It's not favor, because when he called after he tortured this woman and did all this stuff, he had this list of stuff he was going to do to her, and you don't know why yet, why he was doing these specific things. I thought it's like, oh, is this like simulating a car wreck? Because he called from a mobile or from a
payphone.
Yeah, those things, and then she was like kind of sitting out of a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, oh, is he like simulating a car wreck? What's he doing? So it was sort of a weird scene.
Yeah.
And then they explain, it's like, oh, this is why this is the Good Samaritan. Because he said on the phone, well, I've done it again. It's like, oh, okay, he's done this before.
But also,
and I really thought this guy was a creep, and I wanted him to get shot in the head.
Yeah.
Because I thought, oh, this guy's like murder torture, like on another level. Like he seems to have a lot of medical knowledge.
Yeah, well, you thought he was. I mean, you think he's just somebody who likes to torture people because he's a psychopath. Like,
yeah,
that's just how he. But like, no, he actually has like a methodology behind it.
And I figured being on the blacklist, it's like, oh, he's a professional torturer. Like,
yeah.
And this is like, hey, he's worked for some government and done something. And nope, but that's what I thought, because you think a lot of things about this guy at first. The first thing.
Well, it's like, it's like technically he's not on the blacklist.
Yeah.
But
I assume he was, because it's the show.
I can't remember, but like it's because there's a thing is like where like one guy, I think Cooper says he's not on the blacklist, and then Liz is like, yeah, but it's important to me, and if it's important to me, it's important to Red.
Yeah, I think they did that because, remember, the team is under the onus of this investigation because someone's a mole, and so she's doing like a side case. But because Raymond knew about it, I thought, well, wait, is this on the blacklist or not? I don't know. But yeah, so but we're jumping ahead because we don't know anything about this guy other than what we just described with the lady being left in the minivan.
But we had in the middle of this being investigated, the whole blacklist unit is getting interrogated for possible suspects on who's the mole. And at least, we have Wrestler. He's like, he has a bad leg. He has a crutch he's walking around with, so he's not just immediately healed.
Yeah.
And we have Red holds a private funeral for Luli. Oh yeah, I forgot there was a part where it said like, and there's a body missing. I didn't understand what that meant. It's like, oh, he took Luli's body. So.
Yeah. Yeah, because when they said Red had something to do with it, I was like, oh yeah, one of his two like main people got shot. Okay. But we didn't know that from the episode until they set up.
And then there's like at the funeral, which is just a private funeral where Red's there, he kind of flashes back to before she gets shot, and And then it's followed up with Johnny Cash when the man comes around.
Yep.
And then Red's interrogating all the people who are involved with it that he can get a hold of. And then like they're like, they're like, oh yeah, we didn't know each other. We just did stuff. And then we get, and this is where the payoff is. And he's like, how much do you get paid? He gets all these little details. And then like at the end, because it cuts between him interviewing all of them. And then at the end, it's just they're all dead. He kills all of them.
Which like some of them, like the lady that pulled the chip out of his head that was a paramedic, like why was she killed? She didn't know anyone who was involved, or it seemed like, oh yeah, well this is why you don't like Reddington. Like he's the most character, but he's evil.
Well, I mean that's also they have him before he kills her. Like he's like, you're a paramedic, you save people. That's too bad. Also, you have a pretty face. Like that's too bad. And then but my revenge is here. So
yeah.
And then Liz and Red talk about the Good Samaritan, so that Red gives her clues like you should be focusing less on the killer and more on the victims.
Yeah,
and that's where he figured out that it's like the wrestler and Liz are like have the father and the kid to like they take the father to identify the body, and the kid's like more worried about like his father than his mom who's dead.
Yeah.
They're like, what's that about? And we find out what that's about.
Yeah. Because I thought it was like, is this bad acting, bad writing? It's no, there's a reason.
So apparently like his mom was abusing him
horribly.
Yeah.
We find out that wounds she suffered, the punctured lung, the broken collarbone, like that's stuff that happened to her kid.
Yeah.
It's like I've raised a child, and I'm not going to say there weren't spankings involved. There were no punctured lungs, and broken. I mean, the only injuries he suffered, broken bones wise, happened on a football field. And believe me, they asked him, like, "Where did this happen?" It's like, well, 500 people saw it happen. But yeah, it's like, ooh, that's a woman doing that. That's kind of unusual. But we don't get much of the backstory other than that's kind of like a thing to plug into the rest of it.
Yeah, so the killer harms their victims based on how they abuse others. So then it kind of gives the killer like, oh well, he's killing people. It's basically using that kind of Dexter out. It's like, well, he's killing bad people, so it's okay.
He's killing the killers,
Yeah. And then Red walks in on some guy named Fyodor, and he like just shoots all his guys, and so Red is like trying to trace the money, and that's why he's acting somebody like how he got paid, and there's like their 5s and 10s, and so he knew it was like this guy because he was too cheap to do something some way. It's just easier to launder 5s and 10s or something.
Well, no, he was laundering all the money through the nightclubs.
Oh,
and he wasn't paying what they call a rinser at a bank to make it all seem legitimate where you could get large bills. So he's just paying these people in stripper tips, which is like a tell with this guy because he's just too cheap to. That's how Red puts it together.
So yeah, he shoots the guy in the leg and then he's interrogating him further, and he's pouring alcohol on him and he's about to like light him on fire, and then he gives him the message, and then he kind of like he puts the match out, but then he like lights a cigar and like puts it in his mouth. And then he just goes like, oh, the suspense is killing me. And then he just shoots the guy.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably better to be shot than burned alive.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, unless these people are drinking rocket fuel, a lit cigar is not going to light alcohol on fire.
Yeah. I mean, well, once he shoots him, he drops the cigar. So, and there's no like fire. So
yeah, you don't hear like. Again, it was done more for drama than accuracy.
Yeah. And there's just like a weird, funny, because he says the suspense is killing me when he literally kills somebody else.
Yeah.
We found out the killer is like a med tech who like comes in when there's a short shift at various hospitals.
He's an emergency room nurse.
Yeah.
And he's a float nurse, which means he makes about $70 an hour because he moves from hospital to hospital when there's a shortage. And so this is where he gets all his information.
Yeah.
About who's abusing spouses, children, etc.
because he floats around, that kind of makes him more anonymous, so he'd be less likely to be picked up. Although when they finally put the clues together, they just kind of immediately know where he is. But,
Yeah, it's
but he's officially involved in places. So
well, this story is being slivered, except for the dramatic intro. This story is pretty much being slivered in between Ray's, tri-state murder festival.
yeah.
So it's kind of sometimes you're like,
And then Aram is involved somehow with the not with the killings, but with the mole at the unit. And so Red kidnaps him and has him steal money for him, but like
from himself.
Yeah. But he and Red like is disassembling and reassembling in 1911, and he has till that when he gets it reassembled before he'll shoot him. and then once he shows like, okay, I laundered the money, and he shows like he asks how he did it. He's like, okay, so you're too smart to launder money stupidly, so you're not the mole, you're being set up as the mole, because also the unit gets it's like Douglas something that's like that gets pointed at Aram, but he's being set up.
Yeah, I'm glad, because I like Aram. I was like,
yeah,
they're not gonna kill him, like he's the kind of the decent guy. And
yeah, he was remorseful of killing a bad guy.
Yeah, even the interrogator, when they were like, why'd you feel bad about killing that guy? It was because he's a human being. And I was like, huh? No, he's a bad guy, though.
Which is actually extra funny, because he's the only person in the show who has those feelings.
Yeah.
So we see, why did I write Frank? Oh, because Frank Whaley. Okay. And his character is actually Carl Hoffman, but he's at this anger management anonymous thing, and he introduces himself as Victor. So it's a bunch of things. Okay. So that's why I was, and he kind of gives a story about his history of his mom abusing him.
Yeah.
Just kind of vaguely. So that's what, because there's a scene earlier where he's like, all right, Mom, we're going to put you over here. And she just kind of seemed like she was catatonic. We actually don't know what's wrong with her. She seems to be, he must have done something to her, because she still seems to be like conscious and knows what's going on. But like,
yeah, she's emoting in a very subtle way.
Yeah.
She's obviously upset about what's going on around her.
Yeah.
I was surprised that, like, they have AA for people that beat their wives. Like, I didn't know that existed. I don't know that it does, but in the story I was watching this, I was like, is that real? It probably is, but I just...
Well, that's why I just wrote anger management, because that's what I assume it was, but I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if there's anger management anonymous or anything like that.
Yeah, well, anything where there's a bunch of people meeting in a church basement, to me, is AA, regardless of what you're talking about.
It's exactly. I mean, that's the model it's using, and and the whole AA model, like, it has no central leadership, so anybody can use it to whatever end. So, they have dinner.
I've never been to any meetings like that, so I'm always fascinated. That's like, I learned about that in what is it, the movie where the guy pretends to... Oh man, I'm really blanking tonight. I'm sorry.
Fight Club?
Yeah. Like, that was so fascinating to me, because I've never really committed to stuff enough to be addicted, except like food. So I'm always amazed at people like, oh, talking to strangers helps. Because to me, that sounds like a nightmare. Like, if they told me you got to talk to strangers about your problem, they would literally have to like peel me off the ceiling. Like, there's no way I'm doing that. But like I said, I lack the commitment and will to be a good drunk or addict or something. So I've always played around with it, but I just I just want to read a book. I don't want to be high on drugs right now.
Yeah, the most detailed thing I got about AA is reading. There's a book called The Starfish and the Spider, which is about management styles. Well, not necessarily. It's like group structures of stuff. So,
okay.
So it talks about, like, the spider is if you kill the head, then the legs die or the body dies. But here with a starfish, if you kill the head, that just becomes 6 more starfish, essentially.
Yeah, it's about leaderless resistance.
Yeah.
The sobriety or drugs or the government or whatever you want it to be,
or terrorism, whatever. Whatever. So yeah, so that was like AA is one of the leaderless management stuff, because basically anybody can do it. There's no set thing. Nobody owns it. You just do it.
Sometimes I think at my work we have leaderless management also, but that's another story.
That's also how, and I'm not sure how it's this way anymore, but one of the most popular server software out there is called Apache, and it's just totally open software. Like nobody owns it. Just everybody uses it.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's still that way, because I know Microsoft has their own proprietary stuff that does like some nice cool stuff, but it has absolutely none of the kind of like the years of support that Apache has. But that could all have changed by now for all I know. So
yeah, it's changing all the time, and not in good ways.
All right, down dinner with Red. Red, he goes to have dinner with Henry, who's another contact, and he shoots Henry and throws his wife in the closet.
But he really likes his wife.
Yeah.
Like he's really charming to her, and she's like really charming to him, right up until he shoots her husband in front of him. It's like, calm down, I'm going to throw you into the closet.
He throws her in the closet, and even is like, Cheryl, if you don't calm down, I'm going to shoot through the door, and I don't know what I'm going to hit, so please calm down. And immediately she stops.
Yeah.
And then we get the name Newton Phillips, and then Red leaves.
Yeah.
And then we have, I just wrote down Frank. It's our killer takes his mother to meet George, who is the latest wife beater. He's the next victim, so he's all tied up.
Yeah, and the litany of wounds that his wife has received over the years are long and insane.
Yeah.
It's like, well, all she was going to... what he was going to do to that guy is like, what did he do? Beat this woman with a baseball bat like once a year? I mean, God. But yeah.
Well, it's like, because like all the injuries that George here inflicted on his wife is like over a couple of years, and it's going to be inflicted on him all at once. So.
Yeah.
So he has to like tear one of his retinas. He has to go get a beer bottle to like create a concussion that would also be like leave lacerations or whatever. Because he's like, what did you hit her with? Because he's just gonna hit him with a hammer to create a concussion.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to emulate, but yeah. I mean, but all throughout this, I'll say, even though George was going to AA for wife beaters, I was still kind of rooting. I was still kind of rooting for Carl, because I really still didn't like someone who would beat his wife that savagely repeatedly. I was like, oh, just let him kill him first and then shoot him, because I've kind of switched sides on this guy now. Yeah. It's like, he's weird, but and that's definitely not something I could imagine doing. But man, these people suck.
But then, like, while he's getting the beer bottle, the FBI show up, and he has to like run to the garage real quick. He's like, "Oh, I don't have time," and he's about to like hit him in the head with just a ball peen hammer, and then Liz comes in, and then he's trying to explain himself real quick, and then it's like, and then like he makes one last lunge to try to kill his mom with the hammer, but Liz shoots him dead.
Yeah.
And then we go to the hospital where like George is recovering from his injuries. And then Liz just goes up to him and is like, if you ever hurt her ever again, I will fucking kill you.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't say that, but it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah. She'll finish the work that Carl started.
Yeah.
Which means she'll shoot him, but yeah. Or have Red kill him or something.
Yeah.
That doesn't really... those stories don't intersect, but it's like, yeah. It was an effective moment in the show where it's like, I was like, Liz, just let him finish. Give him this one last piece of the puzzle. Because you're going to have to kill this guy. We understand that. But just let him kill this guy first.
But, it's kind of fun that, like, it's like, well, she has to kill this bad guy, but she's going to tell this other bad guy who's technically the victim here that she's going to kill him if he ever does anything ever again.
Yeah.
Then we have Red scatters Lily's ashes in the ocean. And then we find out that Newton Phillips is like Red's British butler.
It's the crime concierge.
Yeah.
And he betrayed him, but not just for money, because they threatened Newton's wife and family.
Yeah.
Which it's like, so Red's like, okay, and he's like, well, just make it look like an accident so my wife doesn't know or whatever. And he suffocates him with a bag,
Yeah.
which is like not, it's like not a clean death, but and it's like, I understand that like Red throwing the Lulu's ocean or ashes into the water and then having to kill one of his confidants is terrible. But because we really didn't know either of those people very well, it kind of lacked impact.
Yeah.
It was just the fact that Red killed some guy with a bag, which was like, that takes like 8 minutes in real life, I've read. So it's like, yeah, it's like, I know this was supposed to be like an impactful scene, but I almost thought it was silly in a way.
Yeah.
Like, because these are people, I mean, we knew Lulu. She knew she was like the best money launderer in the universe or whatever. And then we always knew this guy was the concierge of crime. He was like the what's the guy, the Batman's butler?
Oh.
Alfred? Yeah, he
Yeah,
was
Alfred,
like
yeah.
raised Alfred, but we knew nothing about him other than he stands around and looks, sad a lot.
Well, it's weird because like you never saw the butler guy. You never saw him with, because Luli and Dembe were always hanging around, but they were never all three together. But
Yeah.
And then we have Diane, who's kind of like the bureaucrat of everything. She has a briefing, basically saying like, we found the mole and we can't tell you who it is.
Yep.
And we have a contact. It's confidential. And then we switch over and it's Alan Alda, the bad guy from the previous two episodes,
Who's apparently a senator or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
He's either a congressman or he's like related to something that would like report to Congress people.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got the big bad in bed with government here with Alan Alda. So.
Yep.
And then it ends where Red shows up at Liz's house, and basically we kind of set things back on track where like they're just gonna start up where we left off, where they go and find people on Red's list.
Back to the blacklist. Yep.
So I thought it was a good follow up episode to like what is something that's really hard to follow up. So, but yeah,
It was.
But yeah, you're right. It was like two stories that didn't really intersect, and so they just didn't work as one whole episode.
And two stories that were strong too.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we just, I felt like the Good Samaritan was kind of wasted, but he was also kind of a one-trick pony. Like, he'd been doing the same thing, and even that's what Liz said screwed up the investigation, is, he didn't progress as a serial killer. He did the exact same thing. Like, he didn't up the ante. He didn't like send notes to the police like, aha, I'm smarter than you. No, it was none of that. So, but you find out it's like, well, he was kind of a serial killer, but really he was just a twisted person who was carrying out.
He was a vigilante who used like serial killer like methods.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I'm going to collapse your lung now. It's going to be very painful, and you're going to involuntarily cough.
Yeah, it had no problem hurting people, which is weird.
No, didn't ever hesitate.
But like in theory, had a problem with people being hurt.
Yeah. Like, I respect your passion, just not your art. Just not your art. The craft is all wrong.
And it also was just a weird way to get back at his mom. So
yeah, and it's
you hurt me, now I'm gonna hurt other people in front of you until you die.
I'm gonna make you watch. Which it would actually, almost by the logic of the show, because he even said like, oh, I used to think, why would my mom hurt me? The one person he was supposed to love, wouldn't this cause her pain? But then I realized it was bringing her pleasure to hurt him. Yeah. And it's like, so I'm going to hurt people in front of her, which, like, well, that might also bring her pleasure.
Yeah.
Screwed up.
But they do show her crying, so it's
yeah,
like, okay.
Which kind of like, okay, yeah. It's like, because if they showed her like her eyes were real wide and she looked like in the throes of ecstasy, it's like, whoa, what was it? Is he trying to? What's he doing? Is this more of an Oedipus thing? What do we got going on here? But no, that's just digging too deep.
Yeah. So for our second show, we have The Mentalist, Season 2, Episode 11, Rose-Colored Glasses. Original air date, January 14th, 2010, CBS Thursday. A former high school student and his wife are killed before the high school reunion, and Jane is forced to get Rigsby to help to form an elaborate ruse to find the killer. Showrunner Bruno Heller, written by Leonard Dick, and directed by also Dan Lerner from the previous episode.
Weird, yeah.
Sometimes I read out this stuff, and I was making fun of another podcast for just being a Wikipedia list. So this is sometimes where it works out, where there's weird connections between the different shows that really have no connections.
Well, that's the thing. We don't watch network TV. That was the whole premise of the story. And now we start to see like all these names and faces repeating themselves. This is not the first time it's happened. It's kind of weird. It's like, oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
I liked his blacklist effort. I'm going to tell you, I could not get into this episode. Very rarely can I not get into an episode of The Mentalist. This one did not.
I mean, I thought the episode was fine. I don't think it was necessarily a bad episode, but it was just an episode.
Yeah, I was hoping for it because last week's was kind of like, ugh, and this week was even more.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll put it this way. I watched this an hour and a half ago, and like nothing stuck with me. At least with the baseball episode, like some things stuck with me.
Yeah. We also mentioned that that was probably an episode we'd probably forget. So now we'll never forget.
Yeah.
It's in our mind palace now is the thing to forget.
Yes. It's in the delete thing, but I never go to find her and hit the empty trash because it's like, well, I'm watching porn, so I can't do this now.
We have Van Pelt and Rigsby like sneaking affection at the office, and then somebody else shows up and they just like run away from each other. And then we cut to the murder scene. It's a dead couple in an SUV. They're shot. It's Selby and Jan Vickers.
Yep.
And we find out it's a high school reunion episode.
Yep.
Because they're like kind of looking through all the clues, and then they spot that the lady has like a really expensive dress on, and they're trying to pick out.
And how do they spot that? Because they left the tag on the dress.
Yeah.
Means they were going to return it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Is like, why would you leave a tag on?
I mean, dress? I've heard of people doing those things, but I don't do those things. Also, I'd never like be one to purchase either an $800 any clothing item. So
yeah, I mean now
unless it was like some heavy duty work thing where it's like it's a Carhartt, but it's also got like flak jack in it.
I think the most expensive article of clothing I have is a North Face McMurdo parka, the original ones, not the new ones, the original ones, and I got that on eBay, and it was like I mean, on book, it was almost 3 times the cost of what I paid for it, but it wasn't original. It was a real one. I did find that out. But it's like, yeah, I cannot imagine spending $800 on like a piece of fabric.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. I don't get that. However, show me like a revolver with like deer engraved on it. It's like, oh, this is, this thing's like, X amount of dollars. Like, yeah, here, take my money, so I guess it's what's important to you.
I mean, I get expensive shoes, but not for fashion, but like I get like Red Wings and stuff like that. So
yeah,
like, they're comfortable, and I'm rough on my shoes, so they break down, but they at least last 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, I will spend money on crazy shit like custom made knives, and it's like, oh yeah, I want that. But yeah.
And then so we go to the high school reunion, and it's Lisbon and Jane are like seeing who like knew these people, and then we find out that Selby was expelled for a prank and he didn't graduate, so that's why they'd be surprised he'd be like coming to the reunion. And we find out that Derek Logan was somebody that Selby pulled a prank on, and so people are kind of like, that's kind of a thing in the background because there's rumors about what happened to him, like he like died, or he's like a drug dealer in Mexico or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's that in the wind.
The old hometown kid goes to Mexico and becomes a drug dealer. That old saw.
Because that's just the first thing. Is like, well, this guy would be the most likely to want revenge on him, but like nobody knows where he is.
Yeah.
And And then Jane like makes a point about like, because Jane doesn't like any of the people here because he's like, it's a room full of people lying to each other.
Yep.
And also this is where like Jane like is guessing about Lisbon's past, almost like he did last episode with Cho, but now it's with Lisbon. And she's like, no, you're wrong, but she doesn't confirm or deny like half of it. Although the thing he keeps like picking up on is like what instrument she played in high school, and he keeps getting that wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it looked like Selby like turned his life around, and especially after he married his wife, who's Jan from Poland. So, and it was apparently like a quick marriage because like they were like married within a month of meeting each other. But and what you think is like, oh, is this one of those like mail order bride things or something? And like it is, but like not in his case. It's somebody else did the mail order briding to her, and then she married him. So over true love. And we also get a thing where like we find out Derek Logan died of an overdose like a few years ago, but we also see like his high school ID, and like he kind of looks like Rigsby, so keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Van Pelt and Cho like go like talk to a suspect at like one of Selby's like where he like worked for like a painter or something like that, or some factory that does like work with like siding or whatever and painting, and it's Badali. So they talk to him, and he like runs away, and it's kind of interesting to see where like he gets away, he's like knocking stuff over, and then Cho just eventually like takes like a wood plank and just knocks him the fuck out.
Well, yeah, that's after what's her name? Yeah, she like always looks like she got crushed by pipes.
Yeah, Van Pelt,
Yeah.
I mean, I think those are all just like, I think it was just awkward, and those were all like PVC pipes. But yeah, if they're metal pipes like that, yeah,
dead.
Yeah. And then like Lisbon, like one of the class members, he's like a DA, and so Van Pelt, or no, Jane and Lisbon like go to his hotel room, and then he seems sketchy because like there's just like a high school chick in his bedroom at the hotel. It's like, oh, what's that about? But then it turns out to be like, oh, he had a kid in high school, and she was
an
just
illegitimate daughter that everyone was hush hush about. It's like, what didn't seem as horrible as it was.
Yeah.
Or as it could have been. I mean,
yeah, it's because like, yeah, he like flew in the day earlier on like a private flight, so it was, but like when he got there, he specifically said to Jane like, I just got here, and it's like, well, we know that's not true. So yeah, a lot of Jane just like picking up on liars in this episode. It's like,
yeah,
you're a good liar, and they're like, what? And then Jane like talks to the vice principal, because I don't know how long this like like high school reunion is, but it seems to be over like multiple days, which doesn't make sense to me. I've never been to a high school reunion, but I thought they were just one day.
Yeah. I've never been to one either. So yeah, it seemed like a very elaborate high school reunion.
Yeah. But yeah, like Jane talks to the vice principal about the incident, and then so he goes to the girls' locker room where like the one guy got like tied up and had underwear put on him, and he's like naked, and somebody took a picture and put it everywhere. And that's in reference to the Derek Logan, who we know has already died. And then the next scene is like Jane teaching Rigsby how to use a mind palace.
Yeah.
To memorize the year school book, and then this is where I picked up on, oh, he's gonna pose as Derek Logan at the high school reunion.
Yep.
High school reunion day 2 or 3. I don't know.
But how did he get Rigsby to do this? That's the thing.
Oh yeah. So he uses their Rigsby and Van Pelt's secret relationship against them.
Yep.
So yeah.
Jane again, ever the sociopath.
Yeah, and that's why I wrote like, how long is this high school reunion?
Yeah, it's the most expensive high school reunion ever.
But yeah, they start doing like the rewards for different stuff or whatever, and then like there's a couple people that like walk out of there as Rigsby is like proclaiming to get his revenge on the other person that wasn't named in the prank, and then like the CBI is kind of spotting who leaves, and we have the one nerdy guy who gets in a fight earlier because Jane basically kind of like gives him the courage to punch the jock from high school that bullied him.
Yeah.
So you think, well, he could possibly be a killer, but then he also has a kid, so it's yeah. But then the other person that leaves is like the popular girl who was like the class president and everything, and so it's the popular girl who's the killer because Selby had a picture of her doing the prank because Selby took all the credit for the prank, so she wouldn't get in trouble, and then she's about to have like some radio show she has about to go national, so she had to kill them. So because he was
trying to extort money because they had the negative. Yeah, she basically took Gitmo style pictures with this guy with like just a bra and panties on, and those pictures didn't come out. But they had the pictures. It was like, oh, that's a weird thing. But it turns out like she's a psycho, and she just likes to hurt people because she was popular in high school. Which is like, oh, okay, that's a writer's room revenge. Or maybe people are really like that. I don't know.
I mean, I guess it would be the least likely. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then what
does
your
Jane
evidence?
say to her? He's like, oh, you're a regional TV talent, right? You know, he says something belittling.
Yeah.
And then we find out Jane never went to high school.
Yeah.
So he's kind of fascinated by the reunion, which kind of putting together what things from his past in the previous episode that it's like, oh, okay, yeah, he's never had a formal education probably.
Yeah. Well, he had to work all the time for his dad.
Yeah, they were busy. Yeah, grifting people.
Yeah. And then Lisbon and Jane dance to More Than Words at the end of the show. So.
Yeah.
Hinting at the Lisbon and Jane relationship that is yet to
never find out what musical instrument she played in high school.
Yeah, he guesses.
Everything else he said, but yeah.
Yeah, well, he guessed like bassoon or something, and then at the end he says like trumpet, and then she just says no. So, and he doesn't just like list them all until he's eventually right. He's just like, oh, got to go back to think about it.
Yeah.
And then for our third show, we have Season 2, Episode 11, Back in the World. Original air date, December 6th, 1985, NBC Friday. Crockett flashes to his role during the Saigon evacuation as he and a war correspondent uncover heroin smuggled in body bags. 10 years later in Miami, the H resurfaces, and so does the reporter looking for the CIA connection. Showrunner Michael Mann, written by Terry McDonnell, and directed by Don Johnson. Yes, that Don Johnson, the star of the show.
The same one.
Also, this is the Terry McDonnell guy. He he has really weird writing credits because it's like basically the kind of infamous but actually very tame video game Night Trap.
Okay.
And I guess he went on to be like an executive editor for like Sports Illustrated, so he's like listed as on like a bunch of like Sports Illustrated swimsuit editions, like video stuff.
Huh.
But yeah, I thought this was a pretty good episode because I was kind of thinking back to like, remember when like Nimoy and Shatner were like trading director jobs on the Star Trek series, and Shatner sucked at it.
Yeah.
And here we kind of have a similar thing. We have almost directing the last episode, and we got Johnson directing this one, and he did a pretty good job. So. Yeah,
this was. I mean, this is Miami Vice, and it's like, oh, this is the crazy stuff I remember. Like, it's kind of the wild stories, and the great soundtrack, which I think they played like a lot of the Doors.
Oh yeah, there's like 5 Doors songs. I think it's exclusively the Doors.
Yeah, it's
which like. Much. I don't know. Sometimes I'm surprised, like where the Doors popped up, and I'm like, is it really easy to license a Doors song?
Maybe the 80s. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they'd have to relicense it for this Peacock broadcast. So.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Unless they just like got a good deal, but. Anyways, yeah. So we start off with stock war footage in the doors. It's
Yep.
Saigon, April '75, so it's the fall of Saigon.
They didn't play the end. I was surprised. No homage to the
I guess not.
Apocalypse Now. Yeah.
There's a part where they do. There's like something referred to as the end, but it doesn't come back. But anyways, and then after we get through all the footage, we have Crockett like coming off a helicopter on a carrier deck, and then he gets taken to the morgue by Stone. Ira Stone. He's played by Bob Balaban, who is a consummate character actor. He's literally been in hundreds of things.
Character actor, and a guy I like to watch too.
Yeah,
because he has a weird intensity to him. He kind of overplayed it in this a little bit, but then it comes out that he was also a drug addict.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, okay, this is why he's acting weird, because he doesn't look like a drug addict. He seems like a guy who's read what a drug addict should act like, and also what a war correspondent should act like, and kind of like, yeah, just do your thing, because.
But yeah, we find out that somebody's smuggling drugs with the dead bodies coming back from Vietnam with the from the soldiers.
Yep.
And then we come back from credits, and now we're at some remote airport, and Vice and the DEA are intercepting like a drug plane, but it's just like a couple of rich kids that are smuggling weed, but not even enough to really like catch their interest, but they arrest them anyways.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like you're gonna like you give them the weed back and like on your way, children. So you gotta arrest them, but they're not gonna arrest them for dealing. And then like a bunch of press show up in a helicopter because apparently the DAA brought them to, show how good they are. And that's where you meet Ira Stone again, and now he's a press corps of just regular press.
Yeah.
And then they go have like a meeting like to catch up, and there's the guy they just called the sergeant who's like was smuggling out the heroin, but they find out that the heroin's going bad.
Yeah.
Because like of apparently like the embalming fluid is like mixing with the heroin or something, or it did, and now it's like making it go bad, and it's creating like some methanol in the heroin that's making
with alcohol. Yeah.
And so now the guy's trying to offload his 10-year-old stash like all of a sudden because like it's gonna lose all its value.
Yeah, that kind of threw me for a minute. I almost forgot when this show was, because it's like, oh, the fall of Saigon, and they're just selling the heroin. It's like, oh yeah, only 9 or 10 years have passed when this show came. I always think of that as like 30 years ago or something, or 50 years ago. But no, it's like, oh, okay, which is still kind of weird, but yeah.
Yeah, well, because like you look at the culture in the 70s and the culture in the 80s, they're completely different.
Yeah.
So yeah, they seem like they're eras apart rather than a decade. Yeah, Stone and Crockett like interview some veterans, but they kind of get mad about it because they think like they're just harassing them and like blaming the vets again. It's like, hey, we've already got enough blame. We don't need any more of it.
Yeah, it's like, how about I lost my leg in the war? Why don't you publish that story? Think anyone would give a shit about that? It was yeah. Because they were trying to find out who they scored this heroin off of and why the guy died.
Well, they're mad that like this guy, because he's a reporter, that he's just going to sell it, and so it's like, he's not doing this for the good of everybody. He's doing this for financial reasons. So that's
this isn't just pure human interest story. It's like, no, guy's got a motive.
And then we're on the boat with Stone and Crockett's like telling some of his war stories. I can't remember the specifics, but yeah, it's some. I think it's the one where they talk about like they pulled the heroin out of his dead friend's chest, like that's the heroin from the beginning.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Stone just yells, "Incoming!" And you think like, oh, is he just having a flashback? It's like, no, they're actually taking mortar fire.
Someone's firing mortars in Miami at a boat and firing them so quickly and reacquiring this boat so quickly. It's like, I didn't think you could move a mortar launcher that fast, but
No, you can't. But when you set up bombs in the ocean, you can't really do it accurately to what mortar fire would be like. So
yeah, because realistically, they would have maybe got 2 of those off, and then he would have hit the gas in that boat, and it's like that would have been it. But it was fun.
Yeah. For one, I thought it was like I thought the guy was just gonna have a random flashback. It's like, nope, this is happening, and that's just his like training kicking in, where you just like, oh, I hear an incoming mortar, yell incoming to because it's not like he's just like, hey Crockett, incoming, because Crockett can hear it too. He's just like goes into a mode. And yeah, they get done with taking the mortar fire, and then we cut to like some Asian guy with gold teeth, and he has like one eye or something, and he was firing the mortars somehow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting parries in this episode, because we have Switek, who's like dressed in leather.
Yeah, he's like a leather daddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's with Tubbs, and they're going around to interview people, and they go to like one of Switek's like connections or something. He's like a drug addict, and he's like dying because he's taking the one heroin. But then they get a clue, like just Dakota. It's but we don't know who that is yet. And then we have Stone and Crockett go talk to some CIA spook.
Yep.
Which you'll explain who this is.
Yes, this is the famous G. Gordon Liddy, who was the former FBI agent and was a lieutenant during the Korean War, who became very close with one of the people around J. Edgar Hoover, but was described as other FBI agents as being reckless and dangerous. But he was very good at arresting people. But so like the character he's playing in this show, like that's just G. Gordon Liddy if he was that guy. Like he's crazy. I mean, I could go over G. Gordon Liddy's whole career. We're not here to do that, and it's not that interesting to everyone. But know that he was of all the people sentenced for the Watergate break-in, he got the biggest sentence. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison because he was the head of what the Nixon called the plumbers that were supposed to stop leaks, and they went and planted the.
He played by Ed Harris in the movie?
No,
Nixon?
he's played by Ed Harris is playing. I forget who the guy is. No, G. Gordon Liddy's played by someone else.
Oh, okay, so he's
the one Ed Harris introduces him. Is like, yeah, this is G. Gordon Liddy. He's a real Mormon. He's like, that was, yeah, because I forget who Ed Harris was playing.
So this is like a really weird casting choice.
Oh yeah, this guy was what happened was he got sentenced to 20 years.
Yeah.
And which was way more than anyone else got sentenced to. Basically, because he was also a lawyer. And because he left the FBI and got involved in like private security and stuff. And then he got in the orbit of Nixon and his people. And he worked for the CREEP. He was basically the chairman of the CREEP for a while. That's the committee to reelect the president. And that's where all the money got funneled through. So the Watergate burglars got paid off book because they were basically taking campaign money and paying people to commit crimes, which is like, that's what brought down Nixon, breaking into the Watergate. And this guy coordinated it. Now, I think he was actually on scene there too, but I think he was like over a few rooms, like coordinating the break-in and where to plant the bugs and how to do the wiretap. So like all kinds of felonies.
Yeah.
And one of the least cooperative witnesses, really arrogant. And it's like, okay, 20 years, dude. And then when, Carter got elected, he commuted his sentence.
Oh, okay.
And so he only served 4 years of time, but he still had to pay, I think, like a $50,000 fine. And he was still considered what do they call it? He was a felon. So it's like, because he sits in this house, when they were interviewing him, he has guns all around him, like on the walls and stuff. It's illegal for him to own any firearms. So, but they're all in his wife's name. So yeah, he's one of those guys, and he died like recently, like in 2021, and I think he was 90.
Huh.
So, but yeah, he had a conservative talk radio show. It was kind of like 90s conservative Rush Limbaugh stuff, not crazy stuff, but yes, crazy stuff, but not as crazy as it is now.
Yeah.
So it was called, join my crusade and fight with it, because he was always calling himself the G Man, G Gordon Liddy, because he was an FBI. This guy, he just knew how to cause interest and entertainment, and he was kind of a gadfly, but also a reckless, dangerous person, according to a lot of people. Like, not a guy who was. He's one of those guys that, like, there's a lot of guys that are big talk, but they're just ultimately cowards and stuff. No, this guy's just crazy. I mean, he believed dumb things for bad reasons, and he acted on them. And like, oh, that's what made him nuts. Is like, oh yeah, this guy's capable of a lot of bad things, but he's not all talk. He's like kind of nuts, and that's again why he ended up getting the biggest sentence out of all the. Because he was basically a coordinator of the Watergate break-in, but his attitude and his loyalty to Nixon were so profound. It's like, oh yeah, you're getting the maximum sentence. Like,
well, and here as his character, he also has a picture of Nixon on the wall. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, he's like that. Who's the guy around Trump that has Nixon on his back? Stone, Roger Stone. This is just one of those weirdos that came from the Nixon era. That's why the Nixon era is so fascinating, because it's just everyone who you think is crazy now that was around Trump. It's like, yeah, it's the same people. I mean, the ones that lived, they're still around, and they still like, yeah, the crazy guy. Let's go to him. So yeah, that was great to see. I almost forgot about G. Gordon Liddy. Was like, oh, I know he was he's in a couple episodes of Miami Vice. I think he's the same character, because remember in this he doesn't get caught. So
yeah, I forget they call him like Captain something, like landowner or something. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, the character's name's William Maynard, but yeah, he's like basically a land developer. But you find out later, oh, he's just a drug smuggler. That's
Well, no, like they called him like Captain, like land developer or whatever in Vietnam, because he was a CIA guy, and whatever he was like interested in, like that's where stuff would happen. So
oh yeah. People said they kind of liked him too. He was exciting, but you knew he was bad. So G. Gordon Liddy didn't have to stretch himself as an actor.
No, just be yourself.
This guy, yeah, just go crazy.
But I wonder, like, who on this production like knew him. It's like, let's get him in.
Don Johnson. I'll guarantee it was Don Johnson. Guarantee it, because he kind of cultivates strange people around him.
Okay.
He's an interesting guy too.
But like weirdly, like Stone leaves the meeting like weirdly defeated and like giving up on his story in the leads. It's like, I just made it up. The sergeant isn't real.
And he steals the Ferrari and drives off.
Yeah. And then Switek and Tubbs are like presumably like well, it's not really like, I mean, it's
a flop house.
I mean, it's a gay bar, but it's
no, the gay bar first, yeah.
But I don't know. It's like more of it's not exclusive a gay bar. It's just kind of like eccentric people. Some of them are probably gay.
Yeah, there were women dressed in drag, or there were men dressed in drag there, obviously, and it seemed like just a crazy environment of a lot of drugs and unique characters. And Iman was Dakota.
Yeah,
and she's like really famous. Like, you know who she is as soon as you see her.
Well, I'm most more as like the Star Trek, Undiscovered Country.
Oh, the shapeshifter. Yeah.
That's where I most know her from. But
yeah, she's been in a lot of things. I'm trying to think of what else. I think she was in a James Bond movie.
Yeah, probably.
She's Somalian.
Huh. Very striking. So
yeah, very tall, very thin, with like really strong features. Like, she looks like, oh, that's a supermodel. That's when you think of supermodels of times past. You think of Iman.
And then like when they're talking to her, she like kind of points fingers at Stone that maybe he's involved with the whole drug dealing aspect.
Well, she knows Stone's an addict.
Yeah.
And she knows that like he knows stuff about like the guy which is Maynard. He knows the guy, like she's like, I think she's hitting around. I didn't quite understand that, or I think they might have had a writing change at the last minute where they changed some of the scenes, because she was kind of hinting around that, like, yeah, he's involved in this, and then it became later. It's like, no, but he knows what's going on. It's like, okay, so he's not involved. He's just being a reporter putting the pieces together.
And then we have Tubbs and Crockett meet Stone's wife and reveal.
Yeah, what a great actress that was. She was like, oh, she seems awful, but then you realize, well, her husband's a junkie who just screwed her out of money at every turn and lied to her. Great actress, though, whoever that was. Patty d'Arbanville. I don't know, but she's like, I've seen her before, but it's like, oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, for like a really small role, she really took that scene over. So
yeah, and wouldn't let those guys. It's like, hey, we're vice detectives. Like, I don't care. I hope you're dead. Oh, you're not gonna you're gonna regret that. No, I'm not. He's lied about everything. Our first honeymoon, which I paid for too, by the way. All that guy's ever been is someone who needed money. He's not my husband. She had like great lines.
Yeah. Or there's a point where she just like laughs in their face, which I thought felt like a mistake at first, and then she like rolls into it and like it works.
Yeah. She seemed to be riffing a little bit there. I don't know. It was funny though.
Then we have Tubbs and Crockett talk with the Dakota, and then she points to some other contact. And then we have Doors break on through play.
Yeah.
And like Crockett's like sneaking up because they think they found where the sergeant is. And then you see Stone and Maynard talking to each other, and you find out Stone is basically like blackmailing Maynard to not print the story.
Yep. Yeah, it becomes a lot less. The Stone character becomes much less a noble character and much more of like, oh, he's just a junkie looking for money. Which is a sad progression of the character.
Yeah. You didn't want it to go there, but
no, because you want him to be like, we're gonna kill the evil of Vietnam right now by bringing down this one guy, and then it's like, no, I'm just a druggie who needs more drugs, money.
Well, it's like how it starts out. It's like it seems like he's a really good investigator because you get all these like really specific details. And like, this is a really great episode, and then it just kind of devolves into like just drugs and money.
Nope.
Then we have a really weird chase scene where Crockett and Tubbs like run into a garbage truck.
The second time they've almost been killed in a van accident in Miami Vice and more.
And it's like Maynard avoids the truck because he knows it's there, but like they don't. They run straight into the forks, and then somebody operates it to lift it up, but then they just disappear. Which either it's Maynard or his guy.
Yeah, who's just called Mung.
Yeah, Mung. Yeah.
And is not credited. Huh. He's credited as unknown. So I don't know what that's all about. But.
And then Stone's wife gets in the cab with the gold teeth guy, so she's dead. We'll find out later. But and then Crockett and Tubbs talk with Maynard's wife, and then they get pointed to the Florida Keys for Mung the gardener is the gold teeth dude. So
yeah, another good wife scene here. Like Maynard's wife she's practicing tennis with some kind of automatic tennis return machine.
Yeah.
And she's just talking along like, my husband, he's a businessman. He's down in the Keys at some secret fishing hole. No communication, that tough guy stuff they like to do. And he's like, yeah, he's with Mong, and he's, some Vietnamese guy we sponsored to come over here. Not the first. We've done many,
What? She talks about Vietnamese that they also sponsor, but this guy's specifically Laotian.
Oh, Laotian. Yeah, that's right.
So
that's right. Which leads back to the CIA stuff, because remember, we never officially fought in Laos or Cambodia.
Yeah. We just accidentally left a bunch of bombs there.
Yeah, we accidentally like flattened a quarter of their country, but that had no military operations were conducted there.
But yeah, then we have Stone is having a meeting with Maynard, and he has a briefcase, and he's like basically like, yeah, I need the money or my people are going to put out the manuscript. And then he opens up the case and he has the manuscript, And like, ah, you left with your wife, so your wife's dead. He gives her like the ring that she had on just to prove that
Yeah,
she's
he's
dead.
like, yeah, your divorce is final.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mong took care of it for you, so you won't have to worry about that. And then
He pulls out a gun.
Shoots him, and then Stone's like down on the ground, and Crockett and Tubbs hear the gunshot. And they start heading towards the house. And
well, that's also where his training kicks in. He yells, "Medic!"
Yeah, medic. Yeah. And then Crockett looks and he's like, "Yeah, you're gonna make it. I think
you'll live. You don't need any first aid.
Yeah,
Should I apply pressure to the wound? Nah, just sit here."
You took 2 to the chest in the middle of nowhere, and you're in the Keys, like in a swamp. So sepsis is already set in, just because this area is nothing but palm trees and fungus. So good luck. But we're gonna go hunt these 2 guys down in the woods, because it is kind of scary. Because Crockett tells him, "Is like, where'd they go? Are they getting away?" It's like, no, they got to kill us. And it's like, oh, that's true. Because if they kill them, then this guy gets away, because no one knows, what's going on.
Yeah, so they gotta chase him down. I think there's like a blending of like 2 Doors songs here.
Yes.
And then Crockett gets the drop on Mung and kills him, but then they never find Maynard, and then they hear his boat turn on, and so they get to the dock as he just runs away.
Oh, okay. Yep, and that's the end. Oh, I'm reading something here. This episode has the most number of licensed songs in it of any Miami Vice episode. And they also have a special thanks in the end credit scenes to the Doors.
Huh.
So I don't know what that means, but couldn't have done it without you.
They're just big Don Johnson fans. Here it is for free.
Probably, yeah, could be. So yeah, by the way, they're not. Maynard's coming back. You don't just get one G. Gordon Liddy. You got to get multiple.
Also, we have Crockett goes back to Stone, and then Tubbs says there's calling in a medevac, and they just kind of freeze frames as Crockett's like has him covered in a blanket and he's hugging him. Just
yeah.
Then
he'll be back. He comes back next season.
Oh, okay. Oh, he's good. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like that actor.
Well, I mean, it says like essentially he got kicked. Like Tubbs got kicked out of the group and replaced by him for this episode, and it was a good pairing still.
Yeah. Well, they have that whole Vietnam thing in common.
Yeah. Well, they just have a good back and forth. So.
Yeah. Well, he's a good actor, so it works. Yeah, I like this episode. This was again. This is more of that goofiness I like about Miami Vice. It's like we got G. Gordon Liddy. We're talking about Vietnam, all the politics of the drug politics of the '80s, the drug politics of the '70s. And the CIA using smuggling drugs back to fund things, which is like that was going on in the '80s too, supposedly. They never admit that that's true, even though there's a preponderance of evidence that the CIA was involved in drug smuggling to fund operations off the books. Like, they'll still say to this day, like, that did not happen. Now, there's different variations of it. There's some people go as far to say, like, oh, the CIA brought crack to America to fund like huge anti-communist activities in Central and South America. Which, because remember, Iran-Contra, like, they got in trouble for trying to sell weapons and stuff to fund operations down there. And so, but I don't know if I'd go that far, but I know they were involved in like lots of drug stuff. Yeah. But that's the part of the CIA where it's like, these aren't the guys in suits giving presentations in Langley. Like, these are the crazy operatives. Like, oh, you want results? Well, don't ask questions. Just give us, this is what you want. And that stuff does go on. I mean, we learned from like Charlie Wilson's war. It's like, oh, the CIA is kind of a fluid organization when it comes to like.
Well, also when you're dealing with countries that don't necessarily have like solid governments, and so like currency and stuff aren't really like readily available where you can sway public there. Things like drugs, American money, guns, like those are you can convince people to do things if you give them all that stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's not a completely wild ass conspiracy theory. There's good logical reasons why it happened.
I mean, we'd rather they would be like smuggling corn for guns than.
Yeah, I mean, we'd rather like actually bring democracy to Honduras, but in the absence of that, I guess this is what we do. It's like, well, we probably knew Pinochet was not a nice guy and was basically a like crypto Hitler kind of guy, but he wasn't a communist, so therefore, you know, you know who Pinochet was, right?
Yeah, that's Peru.
No, it was Bolivia, I think.
Oh, who's the Peruvian dictator I'm thinking of?
It might be him. Let me look this up. Justo Pinochet. And Chile.
Chile. Okay.
Yeah, I just remember I read a book about that once and like what he did because yeah, I mean we always hated communists down there and because we didn't want an arm of the tentacle of the Soviet Union right next to us and or another one because they had Cuba, but they there was that guy was like brutally evil.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't like I'm going to imprison my rivals. It's like I'm just going to kill them. And I'm going to do it in public. And then I'm going to torture their families so no one else will oppose me. And it's like, whoa. And this guy was receiving billions of dollars from the U.S. in aid and equipment and training. But it was all under the guise of like, they're not communists. It's like, yeah, but they're some other form of evil. Yeah, but they're not going to put nuclear weapons here from the Russians if we stop them this way. It's like, do we have to stop them by torturing and murdering them? Can we give them like, I don't know, can they make semiconductors maybe? Is there something else we can do? Oh, we must exploit them too for American corporations. There's the other side. Oh, now I understand. It's all coming together. Because remember, people in the world don't like us because they hate our freedom. It has nothing to do with all this other stuff. It's because they hate our freedom. Anyway.
Not because their aunt was tortured to death because they didn't have sex with somebody.
Yeah. It's it's our freedom that it's a symbol of rage to the rest of the world.
The world's just jealous.
Yeah. Has nothing to do with the fact that we back the most murderous, brutal dictators and flood their country with drugs and or anything else you could imagine. That's not the show we're doing here, but yeah, sometimes it's
if you like what you heard, and how couldn't you? You can find us at anchor.fm/Verhoeven Effect, or you can go to verhoeveneffect.com. Whatever podcast platform you're listening for, you can rate a podcast. You can rate whatever you want. The only thing to listen to is whatever the highest rating is. At verhoeveneffect.com, we have listener support where you can support us for a monthly stipend of either 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99. We're also at Twitter at Verhoeven Effect, Facebook at Verhoeven Effect. We're at on YouTube at American Greed Factory. And you can watch both that show and this show live and unedited. And we also have t-shirts at belowthecollar.com/Greed Factory. So for the Verhoeven Effect podcast, this is Conlon.
This is Nathan.
Goodbye, America.